Hello, fellow Redbirds. Welcome to Bird Fans Forever, podcast number 27. If you're new to our channel, you should check out our Bird Fans Forever Twitter account and follow in order to get the first notice of new videos that we publish. You can follow along there also for information and fun polls. Our website is www.birdfansforever.com, and there you can find our links to all episodes of our podcast across a plethora of apps. Apple, Google, Spotify, and others, as well as a tab to access our videos on YouTube, where we also call Bird Fans Forever. So dunk on the YouTube subscribe button and follow us on Twitter so you'll be the first to see new episodes and get other fun information from us. Our guest for today is Vance Sawyer from the March to the Arch podcast, and we'll be right back with Vance.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of Bird Fans. Today we have Vance Sawyer from March to the Arch podcast. Usually it's a player, so it's so much easier for me to do that. This one's just off, so this is a great one. We're enjoying this one. I became friends with Baker and Vance. They happen to work at a very large Midwest insurance company that likes to deal with farms in Bloomington, Illinois, the one I've been with for 25 years. And so I've been able to become friends with them through work. And so, Vance, love to have you on. We had Jon on earlier. How you doing?
Well, we got a lot of Johns going on, but for the Johns on this call, Jon, and Steve, thanks for having me on your guys' podcast. Excited to talk some Saluki fandom, some Redbird hoops, and the Missouri Valley Conference, as always.
And we joke. We'll get on a call in the middle of the day when we're in between meetings for like 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll joke about some of this stuff. And they tease me about Redbirds, and we tease Vance. Now, before I tease Vance about being a Saluki, my parents went to SIU. My brother went to SIU. There is almost 100 Pembertons, Tates, and Petersons that are SIU. So, but we usually start off the segment by how did you get to ISU? And this situation is, how did you not get to ISU? So Steve wanted to know, were you not accepted to ISU, so you went to Southern? I mean, was that how that worked?
No, I like to choose to go to Tier 1 research institutions, in which Southern Illinois University is one of those, and I know for a fact Illinois State is not one of those in the academic ranks. But, honestly, I come by my Saluki-dom naturally. Both my parents are Salukis. I have been going to Saluki football and basketball games since I was in diapers. I've likely had my diaper changed in SIU Arena and McAndrews Stadium, if I had to guess. And I've been going to Arch Madness since I've been in diapers as well. I believe my record is almost spotless, unless my parents are lying to me. So I come by it naturally. I did look around. I looked at other universities, but at the end of the day, I knew I was always going to be a Saluki. And so I'm originally from about an hour south of Carbondale. And so it was a natural fit. And, wouldn't change a thing. And I am proud to be a Saluki.
And my parents paraded me every summer down. We went down for a camp down at the, what is the Giant
City. Yep, Giant City. Yep.
Giant City. Yeah, we would go down there and camp and go to Giant City and do that. And on Monday, they would parade me over to, the men's basketball office. And SAU just had no interest. And so, they would have pushed SIU on me hard. So all right. Lucky for Illinois State, I'm a Redbird and got a 1990 championship. Woo-hoo! So, all right. So, you and Baker have a great story. March to the Arch podcast. All of a sudden, ours is kind of predictable, right? All ISU, doing ISU. You guys are really doing something a lot different.
We are, and you know what? You can't have a Missouri Valley Conference podcast without just having a rabid fandom for the Missouri Valley Conference. And, I didn't get to it, but another reason why SIU, look at the record that I got to grow up with. And so SIU, in my lifetime, I have seen 9 NCAA tournaments, 2 Sweet 16s, 4 Arch Madness championships. And so I think the fandom has to come if your team is successful. And so that just, I mean, those were some of my prime memory years of establishing, what it was like to be a sports fan, right? And that's like right on the tails of SIU just having, one of the best early to mid 2000s runs, right? And so, that translates into Missouri Valley Conference fandom, because I think the MVC is unique in that we root for each other outside of, when we individually play each other in conference. Maybe not you guys with Bradley, but, in the non-conference, there's a different type of monitoring of teams in that we have to, if the conference is good, then that can only be good for our individual teams. And so to start a podcast, you have to, the stars have to align, and you have to meet a cast of characters. And, fortunately for me, I met Baker at work, as you mentioned, just through happenstance. We had some mutual friends, and we found each other at the same lunch table day in and day out. This friend group was very Big Ten centric, and specifically, a major university about an hour away in Champaign, Illinois. And so, we found ourselves at that lunch table, and Baker and I, we didn't know each other because Baker came into that friend group after I had already been in it, or at least he came to lunch or at working at the same place. They had been friends in high school.
Right.
And so it was honestly just kind of a weird circumstance that we met, or, we met in not normal circumstances, and we both had passion for the Missouri Valley Conference, him with Illinois State, as is well documented on your podcast and mine. And so it's one of those that we at the lunch table, me and him would always be talking Valley, and we'd always steer the conversation there. And finally, the guys at the table were just, honestly, I'm sure they were just sick of us and talking Valley hoops all the time. And they said, if you guys know so much and just want to talk Valley hoops, just start a podcast. And me and Baker kind of looked at each other and was like, what's it to you guys? And there might have been, some stakes placed on how many episodes we got in. And it was honestly in the single digits. They didn't think we would get to it. And we're happy to say that we're over 100 episodes in the March the Arch podcast.
126, correct? Is that the one I just listened to? Yep. 126 episodes. That is impressive. So, yeah. Yeah, and like we were chatting about, right, I met these two long ago, through our wives after I was done playing. And one of the things that, I admire about your podcast, and these two also do, is you guys root for the Valley, right, outside of conference, and then in the tournament. And so for our podcast, right, it's a little different. They bring the fan experience and the perspective. I bring the ex-player perspective. And it's a family show. Otherwise, I'd be flipping the bird to all the rest of those universities. If Bradley is in the tournament, I'm okay if they lose by 70, right? And so, and probably cheering them on that they need to keep pressing and finish off the game, right? And so, but that's the difference between an ex-player and a fan, right? And so, again, I have said this to anybody who will listen to me, and that's not very many people, including my wife. But I think you guys do a tremendous job of being level set as best you can with having your fandom, right? You cover a lot of those teams, and I really enjoy your podcast.
Yeah, so. Appreciate that. And it helps you monitor the Valley in a different way. It's kind of unique. When we talk to other people that are fans of the Big East or even the Big Ten, fans, they just don't get the Valley allegiance from a fan's perspective. But in a league that's has to scratch and claw for multiple bids, that it's not, intrinsically Absolutely. There. It's just a different mindset. And, fortunately the podcast has, created opportunities for me to meet a bunch of great people from different universities. And so, honestly, I have friends that I see once a year at Arch Madness, but it's 364 days later, and, we don't miss a beat because we're either interacting on Twitter or via the podcast or texting or right. the various Valley group chats that I'm in. It really just, it means more, and it's, it's made it a lot of fun just to to root for teams and have insights that I would have never had because I was a Saluki fan and maybe I went to a couple websites, but now I'm or message boards and now it's I've got a pretty good community to coalesce with.
All right, Vance. So one of the other things I have found very cool about your podcast is the fact that you have built friends from out of nowhere at these different universities, right? And, I mean, you have an expert come on from Bradley and Drake and wherever else, right? I've listened. Talk about that. How did you do that? How did that come about? What were you thinking?
Some of it is just wild. It's just walking around the concourse at Arch Madness and you run into people and you kind of see the same people year in and year out. You're maybe out at Ballpark Village or run into random Valley fans in St. Louis. That's honestly where it starts. Obviously with social media, that builds a group as well. And so I think that one is when we started the podcast, we tried really hard to get really good guests because we were trying to get representatives from every member institution because, yeah, we can talk Salukis and Redbirds, but I don't know anything about the Sycamores other than what I can see with my own eyes. So, we knew we needed to draw in non-Saluki and Redbird fans because we truly wanted it to be everything about the Valley because of our sentiments that we've talked about the Missouri Valley Conference. And so we've been very fortunate to meet some really good friends along the way, get some great guests I'd consider friends and recurring guests because it's a niche league. And so, I got to shout out Harry Schrader with the Valley Hoops Insider. He's a recurring guest. If you follow the Valley at all, Harry, and he's one that, we text and keep up with the Valley Hoops, and he comes on the podcast and look forward to seeing him at Arch Madness. And then it goes, kind of the other way. Those are the kind of the professional relationships, and then you just meet friends. One of the weirdest things of you made it moments, and I don't mean it as in I'm popular by any means, but hey, people listen to us and we have a reach. Is I was standing in line at Arch Madness, getting popcorn or soda or something, and I was talking to my dad, and the guy in front of us turns around and he goes, "Are you Vance?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I've never seen." I mean, we're audio only. You guys are video. We're audio only. He goes, "I listen to you all the time, and I just heard this voice that I knew." And I was like, it was one of those moments that I was like, "Oh my gosh, people actually listen to us." I just thought it was my parents and bakers. And so,
and we're the same way, right? When I pitched this idea to these two, they were less than enthusiastic about joining me in this journey. But in the beginning, we kind of set, what would be our criteria for success? That we'd have two of the three of us listen to our episode, right? We weren't even sure we could get all three of us to listen to the episode. So, yeah. And I'll tell you, I told you guys when we were chatting a couple weeks ago in our little meeting at work, I love the picture of you two at the scores table and getting the. And I asked you at that time, was that kind of the moment? Because you two have the biggest grin on your face, right? and to sit courtside and be in the press row after starting a podcast probably was not on the top 5 things you thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I thought it would never happen, and just to have a placard at Arch Madness that says Vance Sawyer, March the Arch, here's your seat on press row. Yes, that was one of those moments. One of the coolest things that happened this season is we went to Media Day for the first time. It was honestly kind of the first time that I'm going to say, I'm not even calling us legitimate, but we had more legitimacy than we did 5 seasons ago when we started this thing. First time in person we went, and we walked in and Mike Kern and the Valley staff were like, "Oh yeah, we got you set up. We got 3 chairs over there. You 2 sit down, and we'll bring people over for you to interview the players and the coaches." And it was also one of those pinch me moments of I have grown up loving this league. I love following everything Doug Elgin did. It's just one of those moments of you're telling me the Valley staff, 1, knows my name, and 2 is this is cool, and we love the weird exposure you're bringing to us. That's what it's about. We want to grow the fandom in the Missouri Valley. I want my goal is I have such fond memories of going to Arch Madness as a little kid and growing up, and just the friend group that I go with from back home. You know, if one family starts that tradition and it grows, like, that's success in my mind. It's not for me to, you know, go to all these things. It's really to make Arch Madness special, because it has had such just it's a core memory for me, and it's just something that I believe in, and I appreciate the Missouri Valley Conference and what it's done to just, I don't know, be that. The first weekend of March is one of my favorite weekends of the year. I'd probably rather have it over Christmas. And so if we can get someone else pumped to go to St. Louis for that first weekend, I'm there.
Yeah. I mean, the tournament's awesome, right? And you said it best. You go there 365 days later, and you see people that you haven't seen for a year, and there's a special bond there. And yeah, it's awesome. But this year's going to be a little bit different. So let's talk about that, right? The format's changed. So Thursday it was bad to play on Thursday, right? It was a bad stigma. But now there's actually going to be more teams playing on Thursday than get a bye. And if you play, you used to play at night, and then you had to come back early in the morning. So now there's 24 hours. So it's going to change a little bit. So give us some of your thoughts on that. And then let's talk about some potential matchups that might be interesting.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Is the stigma's kind of gone, right? Like, the stigma of, oh, these are the bad teams is gone. But now it goes to show, like, how important the 4 teams at the top is. Like, that's just such an advantage that we just won't see, because everyone had a level playing field other than the seeds, right, in the 10-team tournament, except for the bottom 4. So it's like, okay, the bottom 4 had the hard way out. Well, now it's top-loaded. It's the other way around. So I think, and this year we can get into it of, like, matchups, like, throw caution to the wind. I really think that everyone has a legitimate chance, barring, I'll throw Evansville, but hey, they got the win last night over Northern Iowa, so maybe they're in the running. But, 1 through 8 for sure. I mean, toss a coin at this point. I think there's 2 teams, unfortunately, for actually all of us on this call, that are trending in the right way, just the way in which they're playing teams and putting teams away, Bradley and Drake. I think they're trending in the right way in the middle, or early to mid-February, going into March. So I think all eyes are on those 2 teams. I mean, Southern and Belmont, like, right there. Southern's right there, also tied. But, they've had some close games with teams that maybe they shouldn't have been as close with, but they're still winning.
UIC last night.
Yeah, UIC.
And I told these guys, right, to win a championship, you don't play your best basketball every game throughout the whole season. You got to be able to win ugly. And to beat UIC, to lose to UIC would have been bad. To have a loss to UIC and Illinois State is just bad news, right?
Yeah.
So to win ugly, you got to do it, right?
Well, I think the problem that whoever draws a 6, 7, and 8. I mean, the top 8 teams are clearly above the other 4, but I mean, UIC's played everyone tough and close. I mean, go look at their scores and stuff like that. I mean, they came back last night and made it a game in the second half against Southern. I mean, Illinois State's played teams tough too, so it's not like there's a free pass, for those teams. Then they got to turn around, and play one of the teams that got the bye. So there is a huge advantage.
Huge advantage, leg advantage, because it's hard on your legs by day 3, right? I mean, it's you're getting worked in. To have an extra day on your legs is going to be, and whoever draws Illinois State, do you get the team that played Southern? That's a team that could go deep into the tournament, or do you get the team that just played Bradley or UIC? And that team we might have to end the game at halftime and just call it mercy rule, right? And so,
yeah, I mean, it's one of those of St. Louis. I mean, this is going to be coach speak, but throw the records out the window, especially this year, because it's just going to be different.
Yeah.
And I think we won't know until those second and third games of what it's going to be. But the parity in this league is probably unlike anything we've seen in recent history. In my mind, because, I mean, we had the years of Wichita and Loyola just dominating, even though Bradley came in and won those Arch Madnesses. But just the parity at the top with, how many games left? We got 4 games left. 5 games left. It's
5.
Yeah, it's something we just haven't seen it like this in a lot of years. So when we think of matchups, I'd be interested in the players' mindset of this one, John. Everyone says when it comes to St. Louis, you don't ever want to play a team or 3 times. It's hard to beat a team 3 times, right?
3 times.
And
it is.
so you always look at the 2-0 matchups, and that's when you start playing into the mindset.
Let's dispel that whole thing, because if you already won twice, the odds you win over 75% of the time you win the 3rd game. Okay, so
you do.
It's
we
hard
had
to
a
win
problem
3
with Drake.
times.
We beat Drake twice handily my senior year, and we're down 10 in the first half at home in the first round of the Missouri Valley Conference.
And you won.
Right.
So
we did win.
still
We
won.
got
Okay.
we Bender had some choice words, 4-letter words that probably were yelled at us multiple times. But yeah, we got our head going.
So Vance, let's talk about potential matchups. And I'm just going to take the top 8 teams, assume they win the first day, and then I'm going to set up some scenarios based on kind of where the teams are right now and where I want to see the teams finish, so I can get the matchups I want to see. Because if the Redbirds are out, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I want to see the matchups that I want to see. So I got my 1-8. I got Drake playing Northern Iowa. I want to see the 2 Iowa teams battle it out in that second round. Okay, and then on the opposite side of that bracket, we'll go to 4-5. I want Indiana State and Belmont. Okay, so what I want to see is those 2 offensive teams go head to head. Okay, and then we're going to put in the other side all the physical teams. Right, we're going to put Southern at 2 against Murray State, and we'll talk about that matchup, and then we're going to have Bradley and Missouri State pound each other in the 3-6 game. So let's talk about if those matchups happen. Give me your thoughts on some of those games.
Well, I like the 2 bracket sides. You've almost got like the offense and the defense side, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll see which one actually wins in the Missouri Valley Conference. So I love that one. The only bad thing is that championship game could either be really bad or really good on CBS. CBS might be like, all right, we're going to have a 46-58 or 52 game on CBS. So they might be just kicking themselves and we lose our contract. And, Jackson just gets really mad at us.
We survived 77-47 ISU Drake. We can survive 52-48.
Really, you had to bring that one back up. Really,
Yeah.
You might as well have brought up my sophomore year at Bradley losing by 25 too, right? So that wasn't a good one either.
Hey, I like that. I like the bracket. If I had to pick from that one, I think we would see a Drake Bradley championship game out of your bracket, in my opinion. Making sure I'm getting my seeds right. It's honestly.
Well, let's just walk game by game. So
let's do
Drake
that. So I
versus
really like
Northern Iowa. Okay.
I like the experience in this one. UNI is the least experienced team in the Missouri Valley. Drake is the most experienced team in the Missouri Valley.
Yep.
Drake has the pedigree in St. Louis to get to championship games. Obviously, they haven't been successful the last 2 years, but they know how to win in St. Louis, or at least survive in advance, right? And so I like the experience factor for Drake.
So hypothetically, let's say he gets down last second, right? Drake's up by 3. Is DeVries going to foul this time or not?
If you were going the length of the floor, you've got to foul under 3 seconds. Got to foul.
All right, so Darren finally fouls the 3rd time out.
Yes,
and they win. They win.
Yes,
okay.
they win.
So Drake moves on. Darren learns how to foul. Okay. All right. Now we got Belmont versus Indiana State. Pure offense versus pure offense. What happens in that game?
This one's tough. I'm going to take Indiana State, and it's probably just recency bias with Belmont losing last night as we're recording this to Missouri State, and Indiana State finally figuring it out after their, 5 to 6 game slide, about a month ago. But it comes down to, I think the lights are bright in St. Louis. It's going to be Belmont's first Missouri Valley Conference Arch Madness. I'm not saying that they can't live up to the expectations, but I think it'd be different. And so with two very similar style teams, I like Indiana State's experience a little bit more than Belmont for the first time in St. Louis.
And the over/under is about like 188, right?
Yep, and I'm taking the over, and I'm going over.
Do you think they're going to score 100? One of those teams is going to score 100.
I think they could. They're both allergic to defense, so yes.
Right. Yeah. I think you might be right. You might take the over on that. So then we come back. Let's go to the other side now, okay? And we got the number 2 seed Southern. They snuck in as the number 2, and they just had the number 7's Murray State. So let's talk about that budding rivalry that's going on there between the two, and what would you see is going to happen in that game?
Yeah, just real quick on just the rivalry, the budding rivalry. I like that term. I think it's right. It's funny. Harry Schrader had a great comment on one of his Wednesdays in the Valley and it was after the kerfluffle in Carbondale, and so he was like, "Hey, a lot of people have been talking about how this is going to be a sneaky good rivalry in the Missouri Valley, and the landscape's changed on rivalries." And I think that I think the Valley was put on notice of just how big of a rivalry this could be because no one talked about it. But if you went to those two schools or if you live in the region, there's a little bit of there's some preconceived notions about each school by each other. It stems back into history for both sports, basketball and football. Football, Southern broke our scheduling contracts with Murray due to just some on the field antics by the opposing team. And also, I'm not going to say we're angels and everything, but there were some reasons. There's a rivalry here. There's some bad tastes that have some historical reference to it, and so I think it reared its head, in Carbondale. And so this is one that, just as a Saluki fan, I would not be ecstatic for this to happen. In St. Louis, whatever. We talked off air about the whole hard to beat a team 3 times, and I know the stats don't back that up, but Murray travels well, so does Southern. It would be great for an atmosphere, but from just a game, like my blood pressure would be just in territories where I don't know, like I'm gonna be at Barnes Hospital, later on that night. So I'm not ecstatic about that one. Do the Salukis win, of course, but I'm not ecstatic for that matchup.
Well, we would be. So, and I do think Southern wins that game. So let's go to the next one. We got Bradley versus Missouri State. You got a team that's pretty athletic, right? Missouri State, and you get some big guys over at Bradley. Who wins that game?
Bradley, and we got to talk about recent history, right? Bradley's great in St. Louis, especially when they're contending for titles. There's some things going with the Missouri State program that I think we're gonna have some effects on team morale, and so I don't see this. This would not be a game if this is the matchup as we see it today.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to the semifinal games, and we'll stick on the Bruisers side. We have two teams that love to play defense. We got Southern versus Bradley, both state of Illinois. That's a nice rivalry too, right?
Oh yeah. Anytime you play in-state, I think that's it's no war on 74, right? But you guys know it. There's a different feeling when you play the Salukis versus maybe the Panthers on a Wednesday night at SEFQ Arena, or if you guys are even talking about that, or if it's still Redbird Arena.
Redbird Arena. Yeah.
So, you guys know how the in-state whole thing works. And so, yes, it's a rivalry. I'm going to pick the Salukis because I'm not going to pick against them in St. Louis. But, I think we saw what happened in Peoria. Southern played terrible. Bradley played pretty good, or played not great, but it was a hard game to watch. But Southern had chances to win. They play each other in Carbondale here in a couple of weeks, and so I think it'll be probably the best game of Arch Madness in my mind if it gets to that. It might be also a very no one might score for the first 10 minutes. Oh wait, that only happens in normal on Wednesday night.
Right.
I'm sorry.
I know we had 2 free throws.
I'm so sorry. That was just me.
Premature confetti twice.
I'm sorry. That there was no need for me taking that pot shot, and I did. But I think Southern would beat Bradley in St. Louis.
That pot, we earned that pot shot. So, we can laugh about it. So keep going. Next question. Go, Steve.
Yeah, just my thoughts. I think Jon, you got a guy that he can heat it up, right? I think you look at that and not to put it's all on one person and stuff like that, but I think the defense will be there. But offensively, right, will Southern bring it? Bradley's playing offensively much better now than they were at the beginning of the season, so I think Southern's, they can't be inconsistent on the offensive side. But when he's on, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a different offense.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great, by no means are these teams like go-to people or the only 3,
right.
But when you put Rink Mast, Malavi Leones, and Duke Dean up against Marcus Damask, Lance Jones, and we'll throw Xavier Johnson up there just for position's sake. That's a great 3 versus 3 game if we wanted to watch one of those. And so when you think of the supporting cast that's around them, there's some names there, and it would be a great rematch, regardless of what happens in Carbondale here in a week.
Yeah, I just think Jones could be the wild card because when he's on, he's like the almost. He's got the range, the quickness and stuff like that, and he becomes a nightmare. All right, so let's flip back to the other side. We got Indiana State, okay, with their unique offense going against Drake, who's got guys who played for 8-9 years now.
Play defense.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're seeing Tucker DeVries come into his own here late in the Missouri Valley Conference season, so that might be the difference maker. It was all about Macaulay for Indiana State early on in the conference season. It's going to be all about Tucker DeVries, I think, for Drake at the end of the season. So I think that's the matchup, or I doubt they guard each other, but those are the 2 names for each teams you would be looking for in this matchup. I think I'm going to go with experience, as I mentioned earlier, but this one could be sneaky good. I think for Indiana State, they got to get more out of Cam Henry late in this season, and so that would be, if we're going to look at like who could be the difference maker for Indiana State, it's definitely Cam Henry. For Drake, they're just so solid 1 through 5, and so I like the experience and I like Drake.
Okay, so we'll give you 2 scenarios in the championship game. So we'll have Drake going on. First, we'll do Drake versus if somehow Bradley wins the semifinals, okay, and then we'll do Drake against Southern, just to appease other people, right? So if it's Drake versus Bradley, does Wardle win that the 3rd time or not?
Oh man, this one's tough.
And who is the whole stadium rooting for besides the Bradley fans?
I think it'll be a Drake. I think people will be rooting for Drake.
Absolutely.
And so this is tough. I think I'd go with Drake. Where it stands today, Drake.
Okay. Now
all depends on because the last 2 times Bradley has won it, the whistles have kind of been in the pockets. They haven't called as many fouls.
Yep.
If this time around they don't call as many fouls again,
well,
because they're a little.
They did call an intentional foul, John.
Oh, that was horse crap.
But we won't go down that path. Okay,
Yeah,
so assuming there's no intentional fouls and stuff like that, you think Drake beats Bradley?
I do.
Okay. Now, if Drake draws the bad matchup against Southern, how does that go for Drake in that game?
Yeah, Saturday we play at Drake, so I'm very curious. So my perspective's going to change. And guys, I'm just going to go on record and say I'm not going to pick against the Salukis, and so I'm going to say SIU. But here's if I were to go against that pick, it's going to be, do they have someone that can shut down Tucker DeVries? And I think, Salukis, we're 1-0 against them, playing them, here in a couple days. But Tucker DeVries did not have as big of an impact as you would expect in that game, and he's trending upward. I mean, I think he's the best player in the league right now. So that's the difference maker. I think Southern matches up well, and just from an offensive perspective, I mean, they can get it all goes through Tucker, right? And so, if you can shut down Tucker, you can beat Drake.
Yeah.
So you don't think Wardle and Mullen will just put all cards in on doing that, or no?
They might.
Yeah. Then you got to control Penn, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think Penn's Southern's got some favorable matchups that can go against him, whether it be Xavier, who I just talked about, or maybe Dalton Banks gets more minutes here because he's a good defensive draw.
Right.
I mean, so I think we've got from on the defensive side, right? Like I think we've got plenty matchup help. It's just Tucker we struggle with. Same thing with Rink Mass. Like, I mean, we can throw some of our bigs at Rink, but if Rink's hitting from 3 against Bradley, who can guard him? Anyone who in the Valley can guard him, and so that's kind of the difference maker for them is Rink's for Bradley is hitting the 3. He's almost impossible to guard because he can do both.
Right.
Well, it's going to be interesting no matter what, and I think you said it pretty well at the beginning. What's different this year is you got 8 teams that you could legitimately just say you make an argument for why they could be in the championship game.
Yeah. Absolutely. But hey, I look forward to the March to the Arch as the first weekend in March comes around and head down to St. Louis because, I mean, I love these mythical matchups right now, but oh my gosh, with 5 games to go, this thing could shake out way differently.
Absolutely.
For sure.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up, Vance. Closing comments for you. Anything you want to close with?
No, hey, appreciate you having me on and getting to tell my Missouri Valley Conference fandom story. I don't get a lot of chance to do that. It's something that comes natural. As I said, grew up, going to Arch Madness, going to Saluki games, and where my career took me. I live in Redbird and Bradley Brave land, so it's bad that I go to more Redbird Arena / SEFQ Arena or Carver Arena games than I do at SIU Arena or the Banterra Center. So what's good about that is this podcast, the camaraderie I've built, and now I'm adding 2 more to that in addition to John here. Just living in Valley territory, it makes it way more fun. Where people can follow us along as we go to the March to the Arch. We'll be breaking down Arch Madness when we know the bracket comes out. On Twitter, at MarchArchPod is my Twitter handle. And then Baker, my co-host, he is MarchArchBaker on Twitter. Listen to us anywhere you can listen to podcasts. It's March to Arch Podcast. We like to re-release them on Friday mornings just to get you ready for the weekend games and follow along the rest of the season because it is going to be a wild end to the conference season as we look to crown that champion and who will be the number 1 seed for the first 12-team Missouri Valley Conference tournament in St. Louis. It's going to be great.
Yeah. It's going to be great. It's going to be crazy. Vance, thank you so much. We'll see you in St. Louis. And with that, this is the end of episode 27. Mr. Engineer, you going to hit it for me? Do you care?